Hi, I'm Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me in doing this nice, simple micro-macrame design in the Yoga Bracelet. You can also do this as a necklace and a nice, simple design to give to yourself or to gift to a friend. Gather up a variety of materials and join me to get started. So as you can see, I've gathered up a number of different materials. I have some 4mm Czech rounds in Aztec, fire polished round in Crystal Lab Full, some 4mm in the snake mushroom color, O beads in the white lila gold luster, some triangle Miyukis in the matte metallic patina iris, and some Toho 80 seed beads in that nice matte turquoise. I'm going to be doing this whole project with some S-lon or C-lon, depending on what you have, thread. And this is the Text 210. The nice thing with the Text 210 is that it's going to allow a lot of beads to fit on the strand, and I'll be able to have it, even if I wanted to, some of these beads to have both beads go through the strand rather than not around. We're going to be doing a simple macrame, the most basic macrame knot that you can. The main thing that you need to figure out when starting your project is how long to cut your thread or your cord. I'm using this nice steel colored or the gray color. You can use a brown, you can use a number of different materials. If you want to, you could also use some Chinese knotting cord. And the thing that you need to think about is, one, how many beads you're going to put on, and how much spacing and knotting you're going to have in between to do that little Chinese ladder look where it's spiraling. You can see I have about 5 to 6 stitches between each one of my beads, and I didn't count super well. I just was going for a feel. So every, 1/4 of an inch, I added a bead and slid a bead up, which we'll go over. To do this style, where I'm adding smaller beads in this micro macrame, leaving about 1/4 of an inch, you're going to be using about 5 feet of the knot side of your thread per 12 inches. So if you want to make something that is just one wrap around, you're going to use less than 5 feet. If you want to do something that is multiple wraps around, you're going to figure out how many inches you need to make it to do multiple wraps. Now my example here, I did it 3 wraps around, and it's about 21 inches. I started off with about 10 feet of thread and used that as I wrapped around. Now, what we're going to be doing is starting off with one long piece of thread, and we're going to break it down into 2 sides. I have about a 6 1/4 inch wrist that I will wrap around that'll fit comfortably. So you have to do a little bit of math of how big you want each strand to be, and then in addition, how many times you want the wrap to be around. In this example here, I did a variety of beads with no pattern. For my example that I'm going to be doing with you, I'm going to take 6 different bead styles and make them so each wrap is a different style of bead, so it looks like completely different bracelets as I'm wearing it. I know then that I need about 40.5 inches of finished product. That means I need about 18 feet of thread, when you do that 5, along the long side to do that. My short side, I need about 4 feet of thread. So adding that together, I'm going to cut 21 feet of my S-lon cord, have 4 feet go on one side and 18 feet go on the other side as we add on our button. In order to continue, what I've done is I've made my own little, basically, spool holder for my long piece, that 18 feet of cord. And I folded up the size so that way it doesn't kind of escape out the end. And I have my 18 feet there and my 4 feet hanging just free. I put a button on the end of my cord, and I'm going to do just a simple overhand knot. Getting the button and the knot right up there at the very end. Once I have the knot there at the very end, and pull both sides here, nice and tight, I'm going to begin my project. If you want to, for an added security, you can take the end of your cord, go back through the button one more time, so that way there's 2 strands going through the button, and this is that shorter end, that 4 feet. Loop back around one more time, and then as you come through again, tie one more knot. Just taking both threads and doing a nice little overhand knot here. And that gets you another cord there at the bottom to make it a little bit more secure. From here, what I did do off camera was on both ends of the thread, I took some Permalac. You can take some super glue. What I did was I stiffened up the end. So I took the Permalac and I painted the end of the project in order to make it so that it's not going to fray. Obviously this spool, we're going to take the cord off little by little as we're working with it and we're forming our knots. But I did also go ahead and firm up and glue on that end. To begin, what I'm going to start with is one of my beads. So let's just start with our Aztec gold bead and do that as our first wrap. What I'm going to do is to get my 6 3/4 inch bracelet, I'm going to preload a bunch of these 4mm beads onto the end of my thread. Now if you have the end of your thread here that it has gotten stiff and because of that it has a little kind of balled up end, what you can do is actually cut it on an angle so that way you can easily slip the beads onto the thread and you don't have to worry about it. I'm going to go in and I'm going to pile up a bunch of these beads onto my thread, and then what I'm going to do is tie a knot at the end of the thread. So I'm going to have a bunch of these that I'm going to feed onto my thread, tie a knot at the end of this 4 foot of thread. And when I say a bunch, I want to do probably about 3 inches or so because by the time I add the knots, that's going to do extra. So I'm going to add about 2.5 to 3 inches of the gold bead, knot the end of my thread here on that 4 foot piece, and then I'll start to push them up one by one as we go through and knot with the cord that is on our card. Once you have your series of your beads on your 4 feet of your thread, you can see I have a bunch here, I have the other 4 foot, or the end of the 4 foot piece kind of tucked underneath me. With my bead board or my bead mat, I'm going to kind of pin down the button. Now you can use a macrame board, you can use your bead board and kind of tuck it underneath once you get going. After you do a couple knots and your thread starts to get shorter, it's much easier to kind of control and to hold this. When I'm working with it, generally speaking, what I'll do is I tuck the button and hold on to the button kind of underneath something that's in front of me. So now what we're going to do is a simple knot. We're going to take our cord over top of our longer cord over top of our shorter cord. Take that card full of thread through that loop and knot it up against the project. Again, always go over top of the other one, underneath that shorter piece, and then through the loop and make a knot. Again, go over the top of the longer piece there, go ahead and lift it up, go underneath and through the loop that you just made with your card and give a nice knot. As you continue doing this, the knots will build and you'll start to see this nice spiraling effect start to happen. You will have to, every once in a while, kind of switch which strands you're in, but you want to make sure as you're doing it that your spiraling is always continuing and you're always making sure that the knot is being accomplished with this piece that's attached to the card. Again, over the top of that shorter 4 foot piece, underneath the 4 foot piece, and through that loop that you just made. As you pull then, you want to make sure to pull nice and tight and that spiral knot is starting to happen. The spiral knot will continue to go and will continue to kind of build, and the tighter you pull it, the tighter it'll be between the project. There is no right or wrong with how far or how much distance you have between your knot and your next bead. Once you're ready for your next bead, simply slide it up, take your bead, forget that it's even there, and just continue on with those knots. Going over the top of the shorter piece, lifting up the shorter piece, taking that card full of thread through, and then giving a nice tight yank to continue with that spiraling effect. Like I said, if you are getting to the point where it's kind of overlapping one another, just take your cord, tuck it underneath, and then when you go in to do your next knot, it'll kind of slip over and do the end. Once it gets shorter, you don't have to have this card. It makes it much easier and much faster, but you do want the card so that way you're not having to pull through 18 feet of thread with every single stitch. If you want to also, you can get a little clip or clamp and actually clamp it down so that way it's not opening as you're working with it. I just take it and kind of hold it in my hand as I'm working with it, pinching it will keep it from coming off, and away I go. Once I have a correct amount, up goes the next bead, and I continue on. Once I'm through with all my gold beads, I'll measure and see whether or not it's to my 6 3/4 inches, or if I need to add a couple more gold beads. What I'll do then is grab the bottom of my thread, untie the little knot that I made to hold the gold beads in place, add a couple more golds, and then pick my next color to start progressing with. Once you get to the end of the design, and you can see all of my different layers here, starting with that gold, and then I did 3 seed beads at a time, then back to the more Czech glass, and then I did O beads. I did a pattern of 3, 1, 3, 1, you can see 3 of each, and then my triangles, back to Czech, and back to some 3 groupings of 8 seed beads. When you get to the end of the design, you'll want to do enough of just the thread to make a loop in order for your button to sit inside. You can see I've done just over 1 inch here of all just thread. I have the perfect amount of thread left. It's always better to cut more than not have enough to finish the project. Once you have the last knot finished, what you're going to do is bend the end of the project back towards the start side here. I'm going to take these 2 threads and separate them out so one goes to one side of my bracelet and one goes to the other side. It's also long enough that I can wear it around my neck 2 times if I choose. I'm going to tie a knot here and pull tightly right down here. Before I do much more, I want to go in and make sure that my loop can accommodate my button. You don't want to finish this whole long project and then realize, oh no, my button doesn't fit. So make sure that you're doing so. From here again, you're going to do another knot, square knot, right over left, left over right. I am going to use a tiny dab of glue here as well. So whether or not that's your E6000 glue, your super new glue works really well, just a tiny little dab. The other thing that I'll do at the end here, just to make sure that it stays and that my knot does not come apart, is I have a couple extra beads on this one strand here that I decided not to do. I'll let those hang as fringe. So I'll take the end of my thread here, tie it off, leaving a little bit of a tail there. Nice tight pull, and now it has a couple little beads hanging at the end as that fringe. On the other side, same deal. Whether or not I want to hang those the silver ones down, if I want to hold, you can see it's getting frayed at the end here. I have tons of extra space, so I'll just cut it down. Put a little crystal bead on the end, like the crystal Labrador here. And then once I have that on, same deal, I'll slide it up towards the end, and tie off my knot. And you can see with that thread there, I did a little bit of a funky pull, but I actually think the funky pull kind of looks nice, so I'll tie off the end there as well and have that available. Once my ends are tied off, I'll just go ahead and cut off the ends, do a little glue here and a little glue here as well. Because it is green, it'll disappear just a little bit, but I can put it on here, wrap it around many times around my wrist. I can do it 6, I did mine long enough that I could do 6 times around my wrist, and easily put the button on with the clasp. You can see also that this will be kind of a converter that you can take it once you have the bracelet if you want to. And hold on, take off all my thread strands here. I can actually wrap it around my neck multiple times and wear it 3 or 2 long and have the necklace design. So I really like the idea of this versatile piece. You can use tons and tons of different beads for it, especially if you're using a cord like the Chinese knotting cord or the Eslon, where many beads fit on it. If you do need any materials, remember you can check out the links below to shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com. You can also go through your bead stash, see what you have, because chances are you and even a new beader or even a younger beader can sit down and have fun doing these wrap bracelets. Look back to the beginning of the video to that 5 feet of thread needed to do the knotting for every 12 inches of knots to help to give you an idea of exactly how much thread or cording to cut. Remember, it's always better to have more than not enough because you don't want to have to go back and kind of add in. If you do run out of cord, you can knot off and try to add cord just with a new knot and a little dab of glue. Remember, as always, have fun creating. Enjoy this yoga bracelet design. I'm even going to hang a couple chain or charms down with some jump rings on the end and really kind of dress it up. As always, again, thanks so much for watching and enjoy your very own yoga bracelet.